Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and take a look at a really fascinating piece of ancient text, Exodus chapter 5. Today, we're going to break down the immediate, often severe consequences of speaking truth to power. You know, when you challenge a deeply entrenched system, you almost never get a swift victory. Instead, it's usually an immediate, painful pushback. We're going to trace exactly how a simple plea for basic religious freedom spirals into a total economic and psychological disaster for the exact people it was supposed to help. So, what actually happens when demanding freedom backfires entirely? It's a heavy question, right? But it's exactly what this text forces us to confront. We're looking at a classic conflict escalation. What starts out as a relatively simple plea for release from an oppressed group instantly triggers a brutal systemic retaliation against an entire workforce. As we walk through these events, keep this dynamic in the back of your mind. The oppressor doesn't just say no. They literally use the demand itself as a weapon to tighten their grip. Part 1. The demand for freedom. The whole inciting incident begins when Moses and Aaron step up and bring this bold, really unprecedented demand directly to the king of Egypt. The text draws a sharp contrast between two completely different languages being spoken here. Moses and Aaron are asking for a 3-day journey into the desert to hold a feast and sacrifice to Yahweh. They even throw in a warning, saying they gotta do this so their God doesn't strike them with pestilence or the sword. So it's a strictly religious, spiritual plea. But how does Pharaoh interpret this? Well, he doesn't hear a religious request at all. He hears an economic threat. He accuses Moses and Aaron of distracting the people from their work, basically saying, look, the people of the land are many, and you want them to rest from their burdens? He views the entire thing with deep suspicion. To him, it's just a lazy excuse to stop working. And that leads directly to this absolute rejection. Pharaoh says, who is Yahweh, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I know not Yahweh, nor will I let Israel go. He completely dismisses the authority of this God. I mean, he has zero framework for acknowledging a power higher than his own, especially one claimed by his slave labor force. By refusing to even entertain the request to avoid pestilence or the sword, Pharaoh is setting the stage for a massive clash of power. He's drawing a line in the sand. Section 2. Pharaoh's cruel retaliation. Pharaoh doesn't just deny the request. That very same day, he changes the rules entirely and weaponizes the workforce's labor. Previously, the Israelites were provided with straw, which is a crucial binding ingredient to make their bricks, and they were hitting their quotas. But now, he commands his taskmasters to stop giving the people straw. The laborers literally have to go out and scour the land to gather straw for themselves. But here's the kicker. Their daily quota of bricks remains completely unchanged. I mean, think about the impossible math of this new mandate. The source text actually uses a specific word for this quota. It calls it the tail. Pharaoh explicitly states that the tail of the bricks, which they made previously, still has to be laid upon them. It cannot be diminished in the slightest. Why? Because, according to Pharaoh, they be idle. Therefore they cry, saying, let us go and sacrifice to our God. By forcing them to do double the work to achieve the exact same output, he's punishing them for what he calls vain words. His logic is basically, if they have enough energy to dream about freedom and religious feasts, they simply don't have enough work to do. Section 3. The broken workforce. This builds into an immediate, devastating crisis for the actual people on the ground. Specifically, the Hebrew officers who are suddenly squeezed between an unyielding Pharaoh and a desperate, exhausted populace. The text maps out this rapid chain reaction. First, Pharaoh's decree is issued. Immediately after, the straw is removed from the supply chain. Because of that, the laborers miss their impossible quota both yesterday and today. And the final brutal result? The Hebrew officers, essentially the middle managers appointed over the children of Israel by Pharaoh's taskmasters, are physically beaten. They are held directly responsible for the laborers failing to meet the identical daily tale from the days before. Desperate, bruised, and completely broken, the officers actually bypass Moses and appeal directly to Pharaoh. They cry out, why dealest thou thus with thy servants? There is no straw given unto thy servants. And they say to us, make brick, and behold, thy servants are beaten, but the fault is in thine own people. You see, they're trying to reason with the king. They're pointing out the absolute practical impossibility of making bricks without the necessary raw materials. They're hoping that basic logic, an explanation of the supply chain failure, is going to save them. But, logic really has no place in a system of oppression that's designed to crush the spirit. Pharaoh just doubles down. He coldly repeats his accusation, saying, "Ye are idle, ye are idle." He completely ignores their practical concerns about the straw and just tells them to get back to work. He cements their impossible economic situation by repeating the mandate. No straw will be given, yet you must deliver the full tale of bricks. The meeting is over, and their fate is sealed. So the crucial point here is how the psychological toll peaks in this exact moment. The source text explicitly notes that the officers of the children of Israel saw that they were in a bad place. They realize they're totally trapped. As they leave Pharaoh's presence, crushed and hopeless, they immediately encounter Moses and Aaron standing by the way. And what happens next? They instantly shift the blame and all their anger onto their own would-be deliverers. Their words to Moses are incredibly harsh, but also super revealing. They say, "Yahweh, look upon you and judge you, because you have spoiled our relationship in the eyes of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hands to kill us." Notice how they don't direct their final anger at Pharaoh. They direct it right at Moses. From their perspective, Moses' intervention didn't bring salvation at all. It completely ruined whatever fragile, tolerable standing they had managed to scrape together with their oppressors. By asking for freedom, Moses has essentially handed the Egyptians the exact weapon needed for the Israelites' own destruction. Section 4. A crisis of faith. This systemic retaliation hasn't just broken the workers. It's actually broken their leader. Having just been cursed by the very people he was sent to save, and having witnessed his very first action as a leader result in an absolute unmitigated disaster for his people, well, Moses is understandably shaken. The text tells us he turns back to Yahweh, but he doesn't return with a victory lap or a positive progress report. He returns with agonizing doubt, questioning the entire mission as the situation for Israel rapidly deteriorates. Just listen to the raw emotion in his words. "Lord, wherefore hast thou so evil entreated this people? Why is it that thou hast sent me?" Moses explicitly lays out the reality of the situation. He points out that ever since he came to Pharaoh to speak in Yahweh's name, Pharaoh has only done evil to the people. And, perhaps most devastatingly, Moses notes that absolutely no deliverance has occurred at all. The plan, from every visible metric, has utterly failed, and the suffering has only multiplied. And that leaves us with a startling look at the harsh realities of systemic change, bringing us to a final, really provocative thought. Is the first step toward freedom always a plunge into deeper suffering? Exodus chapter 5 presents a pretty sobering narrative where the mere demand for dignity causes the oppressor to squeeze tighter, turning the oppressed against their own advocates. It really prompts us to wonder about the incredibly heavy, sometimes crushing price of challenging the status quo. Change, as we clearly see illustrated here, is rarely a straight line upwards. Often things get much, much worse before they ever get better.